Hello and welcome to the podcast We Are Selling, brought to you by Realtair, the home of pitch, sign and sell. Over the last few months, we have done program after program on the technique of selling real estate, what to do with managing owners' expectations and getting the buyer engagement level. Well, today it's time to bring that all into play with a real live story as one of the record sales for the area of Mossman, New South Wales. And just for our people overseas in the UK and the States, this is right down on the harbour. Some of our best real estate in Sydney has been sold. And we're going to bring the agent in, which is Mr. Nick Giddos. Nick, welcome to the program.
Hi Lee, thanks for having me.
Mate, exciting story. Tell us about the property.
So the home's name's actually Urunga. It was built in 1901. It's a Grand Queen Anne Federation estate spanning over 2,640 square metres of level land, which is an absolute rarity in Mossman and Sydney wide. That places it in the top 5 land holdings in Mossman itself, which is very, very special. The owners have been in the property for 32 years or just over 32 years. And they're only the 4th owners to have had the pleasure of owning the home and living there for quite a duration, as their predecessors did as well. But yeah, special home, Matt, and obviously a great one to have my name associated with, or our team's name associated with, and get sold.
Yeah, and Nick, Atlas have done an incredible job of being that boutique, seal-type real estate team doing specialty work. It's really suited the marketplace, obviously backed by LJ Hooker, so it's not a brand new brand. But what was the thinking behind Atlas?
Yeah, really good question. As you say, we were initially backed by LJ Hooker, which is a brand that's, been well recognised for in excess of 100 years now. So Atlas is we're almost 5 years old this August. And our kind of mission is to specialise in those marketplaces that do the premier properties, and we certainly have that association now. We sell the majority of the high end across the lower and offshore and throughout other markets in Sydney. But yeah, it's a great brand, great team, a little bit more boutique-y, but obviously having the backing of a big engine like LJ Hooker allows us to create a huge point of difference for our clients in the market.
Fantastic. Well, let's jump into this sale. What did it sell for?
So it sold for just shy of 20 million, which is actually the highest sale this year across the lower and offshore, which is really, really exciting, given there's been an element of a lack of consumer confidence out there. So it's great to kind of see these bigger homes or trophy homes, transact. It was on the market for probably a little bit longer than what we would have anticipated, but sometimes, as we've discussed previously, Lee, it takes a bit of time to ensure that you find the right buyer. You find, exactly where the marketplace is seeing value for such a unique proposition like this, because there's not an abundance of comparable sales and market evidence to really lean on to ensure that you're making the right decision when it comes to selling.
And Nick, how long have you been in real estate?
So I've been in real estate for just over 7 years now.
I wanted to know that because this particular property took you 6 months. And to me, that's a good, fast time at this level. You're not doing an open for inspection and there's 60 offers coming in. You're looking for a unique connection, a marriage, especially a period home. Like you could bring people through from the younger executive generation and they go, oh, it's a bit old. Whereas a period home really does need a certain type of buyer, and not just this particular house, but all homes of this level. Like restoration, what do you think a purchaser has to do with period homes to keep them restored and keep them in their genre?
Yeah, look, that's a really good point, Lee. And I think we certainly found that right buyer that can really appreciate the character and history behind such a magnificent home. They own a number of homes across Sydney and Australia wide that are all of a similar kind of age and character, from terraces to Grand Federation homes and the like. So it's really important, or was really important for us to ensure that we found a buyer that, sees merit and value in that and will restore it to its full potential. The home was, exceptional, very livable, but certainly lacked a little bit of that modern day living in terms of open plan kitchen, living, dining, didn't have a pool. There are a few improvements that he will look to make, or him and his family will look to make it more suitable for that modern day family, whether that's themselves or someone else, depending on what they decide to do with the home. But yeah, certainly he has a keen interest in character homes.
When you love all different types of architecture, this style of home is gold. It's that Federation, beautiful, historical. Like when these properties erected in their day, they were the mansions, and the most wealthiest people in the world would own this style of home. You still see this in the States as people appreciating this style of property. And let's take our questioning there. Not this particular home, but homes of this level. Like as soon as you're at that 20 million mark, but this one's unusual, 2,640 square metres. Nick, I think you mentioned there's only ever been 14 sales above 17 million in the area ever.
Yeah, well, actually above 19 million in the Mossman area. So they certainly don't transact that consistently at this level. I mean, in Mossman, the record was broken for the suburb last year. A property transacted on Stanley Avenue, which is at the top of Balmoral Slopes, for 33 million, which was a mind-blowing sale. And then our team at Atlas sold another home in December last year down on Aluka Road for just over 30. So there's only been 2 that have cracked 30. And as you say, Lee, there's about 14 homes that have transacted in the history of Mossman real estate in excess of 19 million. So they're few and far between.
Now, Nick, our listeners are all over the country, from regional, UK, the States. Glenn Cortino's over there in LA. He's actually, funny enough, doing that 20 million plus style LA properties, and, you know, been a listener, a member of ours for many, many years. And he went from Melbourne to that market, and it's quite a big shift. You're right there in Mossman. We spoke briefly there about the buyer engagement level and the confidence out there of the consumer with everything that's been going on. And I feel last Saturday the market went up. This was on that day, which is very exciting, but I just felt this rumble across the nation as so many people report back into us. Can I ask you, for those agents that listen to this that would never get the opportunity to represent a home like this at this level, what's the type of purchaser psychology, background? Who's buying homes at this level? Not this particular home, but this homes at this level.
It's interestingly, there's quite a variety of different people that, you know, we're certainly introduced to this home and other high-end properties that we've had the pleasure of selling over the course of our careers. But, you know, it can be anyone from a young tech-savvy startup professional in their 30s to, you know, an older person that's, you know, worked over the duration of their life or has some generational wealth behind them, or, you know, sees value in a big holding like this. We even had interest from more than one party looking to secure the home together, do a renovation on it, look to on-sell it. But it's really interesting what we're seeing at the moment with a bit of uncertainty kind of on a global scale, particularly in that tech space, following what's happened with Silicon Valley Bank over in the States and other banks alike. A lot of the big tech guys, and we're talking, you know, billionaires, are looking at Australian real estate, which is mind-blowing for me, but makes sense because, you know, if we look at the trends over history in terms of growth over a 20, 30, 50-year period, it's a pretty safe investment. So all these guys are looking now to land bank, put their money into land banking, and they think it's a great place to kind of secure that. I think it's a great place to, you know, park their money and funds rather than having in a startup or the share market or a bank where it could be a little bit more exposed and volatile.
As we know in the States, it's been a huge disruption with the banks, Silicon Valley, what's going on. There's a lot of Australian expats over there. That Australian tech people are in demand overseas, because if you can get tech to work in Australia, you can get it to work anywhere. And there's a lot of our smart tech people over in the States that will return due to the tech space has just been completely ripped apart over there. So that's the type of purchaser we're seeing coming back in. What about international interest? Have you got people that are applying to try and buy here? What's happening there?
Really good point to make once again, Lee. We're seeing a lot of Chinese come back into the market. We actually rested this property over the Christmas period and then relaunched it to align with Chinese New Year, knowing that's a time where the Chinese are frequent and obviously coming international to look to secure properties. I also read the other day as well, there was $1.5 trillion that left mainland China and went into Singaporean banks, which tells me that a fair portion of that is probably going to come to Australian shores as well. So I think we'll see that Chinese influence and confidence reflected in the property market and prices in the coming months and potentially even years.
Yeah, I've got a strong feeling on this, and it's not spiritual. I'm in all different types of meeting in my world as I do specialty projects. And a lot of the financial people that I work with are agreeing with this, that there's going to be a lot of money coming to Australia that isn't borrowing Australian money. They've got the money. They're buying Australian assets. And we could see a unicorn moment here in a marketplace that everyone's thinking, we're in trouble, it's gone down. The market's been through a rest period, but that rest period, we are Australian real estate. We are seen as the witness protection program of the world and a safe, beautiful place to live. Just for our listeners, what is the laws that you have to take into account for anyone who's buying who's not an Australian resident?
They have to go through what's called FIRB approval, which is an approval from the Foreign Investment Review Board. So whether you're, a Chinese resident or somewhere else on an international scale and you don't have an Australian residency, you need to go through that process. And what actually happens is you have to put down a non-refundable deposit in the event that you are successful in purchasing the property. That's obviously contributed to the sale. In the event that you are unsuccessful in purchasing the property, that actually goes to the government. So there's a few kind of loops to jump through, and that was introduced post the Chinese and other international markets coming into the marketplace, through that 2015 to 2017 period, where we saw a lot of international influence really boosting prices, particularly in areas like Mossman and throughout Sydney.
An interesting topic because a lot of Australian agents don't know about the Foreign Investment Review Board. Me being one of them. I remember being a 25-year-old kid getting a phone call from a guy from London who was a mate of my mate's dad saying, I want to buy a property over there. Came over, found him a place in Seaforth, and back then $5 million was huge money. And I've run up to the solicitors, I'm all excited, I got my cheque, I got a signed contract, and the lawyer says, Lee, you do have FIRB approval. And I said, what? I had no idea what it was. I'm still not over that day, as you can hear, Nick. But just for our agents out there, not just anyone can buy in Australia. However, there's a lot of pressure on the government now to release this way of thinking. And if that happens and the borders happen, the unicorn will happen.
Totally. I think we'll see a huge influx of overseas investors and homeowners, wanting to move their money to Australia. Not only is the property secure here, but the economy is reasonably secure as well. There's certainly a bit more consumer confidence out there at the moment, as you mentioned, Lee. Like we saw, I think it was the first time in 10 months, a positive increase in the property market, kind of Sydney-wide. And we saw a clearance rate for Sydney at around 73% last Saturday. And then for Mossman, we had 100% clearance rate. And we're seeing a bit of a curve in inflation. The RBA has put rates on hold yesterday. So there's all these things that are now going to contribute to buyer confidence out there in the market. So it'll be a really interesting kind of second quarter. And as you say, if the government frees up some of these laws in terms of FIRB approval and other things, it could really, really go.
Yeah, and a reason they'll be forced to do that or required to consider it is we don't have enough workers here, and there's a lot of properties locked up that if were released as assets would be back into the accommodation pool. So it seems to me like the perfect storm. But when you see this top-end part of the market, and Nick, I think the other factor that's changed for you is in the tech space, you can work anywhere in the world. Like I work in a couple of countries a week and I don't leave East Gosford. So we're no longer governed by being somewhere. And there's a lot of executives coming back to Australia to maintain their role. They don't mind travelling here and there, but you can do this now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I think through that COVID period, that really proved that. And a lot of people still haven't even gone back to being in the office full time, actually probably the majority. And you being up on the Central Coast, Lee, and, along with my parents and family, we saw a huge rise in terms of property prices through that period. People were going, why do I need to live in a two-bedroom unit in Mossman when I can buy something in North of Oka for similar money and only be in the city one day a week? So we've got that flexibility now with obviously the tech enhancements and the way that we operate across all industries on a day-to-day basis, which is really interesting.
Absolutely amazing. And Nick, final questions for you. What did you learn most about the sale? Like you've done very, very well in your career. You've trained hard. You're from good stock. And just for the record, Nick Giddos is the son of Stephen Giddos, the legendary acreage sales professional up here on the Central Coast. But what did you learn most from the sale?
Well, there's probably two main takeaways for myself and the team, Lee. I think, buyer relationships and qualification in a testing market for a home of this caliber is just absolutely paramount. You need to know what's making these buyers tick. Why do they like the property? You've got to be asking those qualifying questions. You've really got to be building rapport with them as well. So what we're finding across the board at the moment, and this may change in the coming weeks and months, given that, consumer confidence is on the rise, but it's really coming down to one or two buyers. And you've got to be that person that's confident, has the market knowledge, knows how to negotiate to ensure that buyer's confidence in progressing things with you. Because if you don't have that, it's going to have a huge detrimental impact on the outcome of the sale. The other thing as well, I think just on the vendor side, being well versed on the market, what's happening, asking those qualifying questions to the buyers, relaying that properly and in a really, really good way to the vendor to allow them to understand where the market's seeing value. There's still a bit of a disconnect in terms of, where vendors' expectations are and the market is. And that may realign or level out, or I'm sure it will, depending on kind of what happens through the course of this next quarter. But, coming off such a hot market where we saw almost 30% growth in 12 months, which is just crazy to consider. A lot of vendors, particularly in our area, are going, well, that price, should still be there, when in actual fact, it may not be. So it's our job as real estate professionals to educate them and say, well, no, actually, this is where the market is, and we're still well ahead of where you would have been 24 months ago. So, let's seriously consider this offer.
Couldn't agree more. And final point here for coaching tip for our listeners. Last year, there was a term used in our industry which I'm not in favour of, which was the term off-market. And I think the agents were referring to off-portal. Whereas in your situation here, Nick, realestate.com.au is the international launch of any property, because all these people around the world are registering for certain types of property to be notified. So the buyer knows what they want, but they haven't met the property yet, or the agent. So it is critical that those notifications and the international sale is taken upon the property. Otherwise, the property didn't get its best chance. You won't know that someone in Silicon Valley who's returning back to Australia as a tech expert didn't know about the property versus, we just did an off-portal sale. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think, obviously we're really active in the local market. So we'll always we like to call it an Atlas exclusive preview, where we'll bring a few buyers through in that first kind of week of the campaign. So if we're running a 5-week campaign, we'll do just a preview to the database. But that's more of like a data collection and understanding from the marketplace for us as agents to ensure that when we do go to the open market, we know exactly where to position the property. We're not flying blind. We're, online in terms of price with where qualified buyers in the market are seeing value. But at a time like this where there's so many external influences, and I'm talking, obviously on an international scale, from the States, from China, from Singapore, expats, all these things, if you're missing that market and you're not on these portals, you're crazy. You're selling yourself short. I don't see any merit in it whatsoever. If there's a vendor that wants the absolute best price for their property, you've got to be on those sites. You've got to be marketing it properly to ensure that you leave no stone unturned and as a result, achieve the best possible outcome for your client.
Absolutely love it, Nick, and congratulations. And also to Anthony Godson, he worked on this one with you as well. And then I believe in a couple of weeks we're going to see you at the Complete Salesperson course, and your younger brother Hugh is joining you. Is that correct?
He certainly is, and our other team member Sasha. So we're all pumped and looking forward to being there. I think that'll be my 5th time, Lee.
Wow.
At the Complete Salesperson's course. So very pumped. It'll be Hugh's first time, Sasha's first time. They're very keen, and we can't wait to see you then.
Well, mate, we're looking forward to seeing you, but congratulations on the sale. Great positive story for the industry, and thank you for joining us on We Are Selling.
Good on you, Lee. Thank you.